talking about rest in peace, I do have visions of your funeral, and there's a knocking coming from within the coffin saying, "I'm not ready yet."
That's right, yeah.
I'm Craig Batchelor, and this is Age and Stage. It's a podcast about regular people navigating the retirement pathway, wherever they may be on that journey. And I must admit, there's a little bit of a contradiction today. I can't say that my next guest is a regular Joe by any means. He has been the Young Queenslander of the Year, finalist in Young Australian of the Year, 2018 patron for International Day of People with Disability. He has an Order of Australia, an OAM award in 2012 for outstanding service to sport and to people who are blind or have low vision. Fervent Global Love of Lives Medal, or the Nobel of Life. Melvin Jones Fellowship for Humanitarian Service. Centenary of Federation Medal for Service to Sport in 2003. Hang in there, I'm starting to run out of puff. He has represented Australia in 3 Paralympic Games, 3 IPC World Athletic Championships in long-distance running between 1996 to 2011, represented Australia at Birmingham Commonwealth Games in para-triathlon in 2022, board member and policy advisor for international and national sporting, tourism and disability organisations, mentor and coach, has tackled Mount Everest, has danced on Dancing with the Stars, and is about to do the double, which I'm sure everybody has been keen to do, which is the Manhattan Island 20 bridge swim.
It's a 50-kilometre swim, yeah.
50-kilometre swim, and backing up a couple of weeks later with the English Channel. I think that's it. So it's not it by any stretch, but it's it for me.
Well, I thought about the runs from Cairns to Brisbane. Come on.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, he got lost and he ran from Cairns to Brisbane a few times. 5 times, okay.
And he forgot about the plane.
Oh, yes, and he's also flown a plane. Not by himself, wholly and solely, but I'd like to welcome extraordinaire Gerrard Gosens. So welcome.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming. So with that in mind, Gerrard, what terms might you use for your journey, career, and otherwise to this point? How would you describe that?
I think my career, both within work and also within sport and other adventures, has always been about the actual opportunity and about the actual journey, not necessarily the actual destination. And I think for me, those opportunities, I never had a bucket list. For example, people go, "Oh, you must have had a bucket list to do Dancing with the Stars." Well, no, because I'd never danced a step in my life. It was something that was approached or invitation realistically. And I took it on, with both hands, because for me it was about the challenge, it was about the opportunity. And I knew that obviously I'd never danced, so I wasn't going to do that well. Despite that, though, we worked very hard and we made it to the final. But we didn't make it to the final as a good dancer. And we made it because we told a fantastic story along that journey to get to the final.
Yeah. And I do remember that period, and it was an amazing time for sure. So mentioning the word retirement and Gerrard Gosens in the one sentence, I get that that isn't something that is a natural fit.
Oh, look, I think it is in some respects, because I've retired from various sports. So, for example, the ultra marathons, when I ran from Cairns to Brisbane 5 times, that was a major goal and a challenge in my life, and I retired from that. And then when I was playing other Paralympic sports and athletics and moving through the triathlon, I retired retired from those sports and from an international level. And I thought that, I suppose, leaving the Paralympic Games, that my pursuits in sport would be finished after the Commonwealth Games. But it wasn't until then someone said to me, "Hey, listen, there's never been a totally blind person swim the English Channel." And I thought, well, hey, look, what the heck? Being an Australian, we've got to beat the Brits to it. And took on the challenge and prepared by swimming around first up Great Keppel Island, which is just over a 20k swim. It's a very, I suppose, nice swim compared to swimming the English Channel. But for me, it's always been about the opportunity. So I've retired from various pursuits, but then things have moved on. I think for a person who's in retirement, they move on to other things as well, where it be, they may be, for example, working in a coal mine, and they might move on to other hobbies, or working in a man shed, or other particular pursuits in business as well.
Yep, that makes sense. So in terms of the actual point somewhere down the track, is retirement, has it appeared on the horizon for you yet? Is there any sort of preparedness for that, or is that still something that's further down the track?
Sport or business-wise? Because I think for me, they're two very different roads I travel along. And I think that one complements the other. So, for example, in my businesses as a chocolatier, I purely set up a chocolate shop in the Brisbane CBD, and it wasn't until Cross River Rail came along, the construction of the underground railway tunnel, that changed my journey, not because of my opportunity, as in the sense of not my decision. It was a forced hand and something that I had to adapt to. And as I say to many people, change is constant, growth is optional. And I had to grow from being a chocolatier to being a cafe owner, and then growing from being a cafe owner in the city to saying, okay, well, listen, people want more than just coffee. They want more than just chocolate. So how can we do that? So we needed savory. So I set up a business at Graceful and Graceful Moments, and now we have the 3 chefs. Have the catering. So if you had said to me, 25 years ago that I'd be a cafe owner, I'd be working with 3 chefs, be running a catering business, I would have got no chance. And it's the same with all my supporting careers. Like, I never destined to climb Everest, but it was opportunity that came up, and I never destined to fly a plane around Queensland 3 times, but it was about the opportunity. And I think for me as an athlete, whilst I'll go and swim Manhattan Island, a 50-kilometre swim, and then the English Channel, which is a world record, not only from a person with a disability, but even from an able-bodied perspective, backing up from that. I'll move on, and I'll move on to something like, for example, indoor climbing. And so I'll retire the swimming. I won't get back to swimming, and I'll just drive other people up a wall.
I've got visions of you continuing to retire from different sports until you've got the walking frame and you're rolling a ball down, whatever it might be. I think it's probably the question of interest that I pose to you is probably from a career perspective. So at some point in time, your working career will get to a point where you might go, I think I am ready to not do as much, or I'm looking to. So what would that need to look like, do you think, for you to get to that point? Because I suspect that is way down the track.
Yeah, look, it's and look, who knows in 5 years how that may change.
Yeah.
Purely because of our economic environment. And I think in today's environment, we need to be more agile, both physically and mentally, in the sense of how we respond to the current economic climate, our geography, our human resources, and also I suppose what is the trend? For example, who knew that jeans weren't a thing that are worn these days, and things move on. It's just all these changes that are always happening. So for me in my business career, sure, being a chocolatier, I work with chocolate every day, and it's something that I can do for a long time. But then it will come to the point where I can step back and teach another person how to create the chocolate, but oversee it from a distance and manage it, and also from a academy perspective. And also, I think for me, it's come Brisbane 32, it's sharing that knowledge around sport and around obviously the buildings that are necessary, the facilities, and it's always the small stuff. I think right now we're thinking about big stadiums and we're thinking about athlete villages, but we're not thinking about the small stuff. The small stuff that really takes a long time to put into play. Sure, big glossy stadiums, we can throw money at it, but it's the small stuff that make the experience really important for an athlete as well as a country that attends.
Yeah, correct. And so in terms of, I mean, I remember, and I shared this previously, where a colleague of mine had boxed himself into retiring at a certain age, and he wasn't ready for it. It was like it was an age thing, and that's something that I've carried with me for a long time, because I went, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make sure that I'm prepared and ready whenever that might be, and I'll determine when that'll be and what it will look like. So it's an experience that I saw from someone else that helped me form my opinion. And I've seen others as well that have said, oh, well, I'm going to play golf, 3 or 4 times a week, but then their arm gives out, or their shoulder gives out, or their back gives out, and then all of a sudden their best laid plans are asunder. So have you seen people that that have determined that they were going to retire, but they weren't maybe ready for it, and that would be something that you wouldn't want to make those same mistakes?
I think for me, it's I realize obviously that there is that what we call that window of attitude where life will throw mud and grime at our own particular window of attitude every day that we live and breathe, and it's making sure we have a crystal clear picture of what we're trying to achieve. And for me as an athlete, for example, like once I finish the English Channel and Manhattan Island, I'll move on to indoor climbing. The great thing about indoor climbing is it's not about age, it's about technique. So it would be very different. I was sort of looking at the 100-meter sprint or the 200-meter sprint, but because climbing is about that technique and agility, it's something that I can work on as an athlete. And then once 2028 is over and I'm successful, then hey, look, I'll continue coaching. I'll still have a hand in those sports. So I think for me, it's diversifying the bucket. It's not having that one sole ball in the bucket. It's having multiple balls, as a golfer will have in their ammunition of their golf round. Sure, they may lose a ball, but it's going back to the bucket and pulling a new ball. And it's the same with our life decisions. It's making sure that we don't have that one ball. We're always on the ball with somebody else.
And do you think that, I mean, it's an obvious question, I suppose, but your broader experiences that you're having now, both in business and in sport, are there some key elements of those that are preparing you for a time when it'll be a little bit more slower or less involved type life?
I think my attitude is that I'm going to turn up at my grave all ragged and worn out and not going, okay, I'm all fresh and looking good. I think that's why they call it rest in peace, because I will rest when I'm there. I'll be all ragged and worn out, what have you. But for me, it's again like, hypothetically, well, not hypothetically, no, truly is that, for example, I leave myself open to opportunities. And at a Buck Holden, they've built a dam out there, which is 1.2 by 1.4 kilometers in diameter. And they're looking to do a triathlon dash, something out there. So they asked me to be a patron, but I said, hey, listen, I'll organize a triathlon. So, if you had said to me, I'll be project managing a triathlon, well, I have had that. No, it wasn't in my sort of portfolio, but now it is. It's just having myself. And I think for me, it's I'm always comfortable in being uncomfortable. And that's the thing that I've learned throughout my life, that uncomfortable part of it. Even, for example, of going out through the waves, like even last weekend, there was punching waves and, trying to get out there was very uncomfortable, as it was, this morning at 3 a.m. jumping into the Yonga swimming pool. It was single digit figures. Was it comfortable? No way. And then we jump into the cold pool, which was 16 degrees. Was that comfortable? Hell no. But I have to be uncomfortable to be comfortable in what the goals I set.
Yeah. I do have visions, though. You're talking about rest in peace. I do have visions of your funeral, and there's a knocking coming from within the coffin saying, "I'm not ready yet."
That's right, yeah.
This podcast has been sponsored by Arditi. Arditi provide business coaching services, mentoring and strategy development. We focus particularly on small to medium-sized businesses and executives that might be struggling with the politics of business. We can help, we can provide some challenging questions that might assist you and help you find the answers that you need to attain growth for your business or individual growth. For more information, jump onto our website, arditi.com.au, and reach out. We'll be happy to help. So, look, being a sportsman, and so a lot of what you do is around numbers. It's how long to do this, and can I improve this timing, and can I improve this? So, in terms of transitioning to a point of retirement, are there any markers for you that you would need to have in place, whether that be an age or a dollar or a year, or are there any markers that might help you determine that?
Oh, look, I think financially, obviously, it's making sure that, within the business, it's making sure that it's financially sustainable and growing, a profit every year. And we have the mechanisms in place to step away and actually have a person, be employed to supervise the whole overall management of it. Or if it comes down to it, selling the business and then looking at something else that may appear on the horizon. Hey, listen, after the triathlon, I may move into organising bigger events. It's what's there. But sure, numbers as in financially. But I don't think I'm my biggest weakness is I have this goal of, and it's bigger than Everest, harder than Everest. It's harder than swimming the English Channel or swimming 50 Ks around Manhattan Island. It's writing a book. And I know that I would have to take myself away, whether it be up in the hinterland or wherever it may be, and totally isolate myself because I will be too distracted or wanting to go out there and go for a run or go for a cycle, or a person giving me a course like, hey, listen, let's go for a swim or whatever it may be. So there are many goals I have in that respect. They're big goals, but how I plan them out is still yet to be decided.
Yeah. And are there any decisions that you're making currently or have made with that sort of thought in mind, whether it be about the business, about your career? Have you been making any with an eye for that down the track?
I think I sort of move ahead into the 5-year slots and, looking obviously past 2028 as an athlete. And then from the business perspective, thinking, well, okay, listen, after 2032, where's my business in this city going to be placed? Because once Cross River Rail opens, that's going to open up a whole new range of opportunities for us, or for me as a business owner. And then secondly, hey, listen, can I transform my business from not just a chocolate shop, but also at night offering, cocktails and other desserts at night for people who now can access the city more freely because they're not constrained by, $60, $70, $80 for parking fees that are currently there. And the same at Graceful. Hey, listen, do I start opening up on a monthly basis on a special night for locals? And then it progressively increases, as the trade occurs. And 2032, hey, listen, I want to sell, maybe invent some chocolate gold medals so people can actually have them at their catering places, sort of. I have full of ideas, but it's how I play them out.
Yeah, sure. And in terms of that stage of life further down the track, how you identify yourself.
I don't see myself as old as I am.
Yeah.
I don't, because age is just a number.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about those opportunities. So I don't play with the number of, hey, listen, I'm 23, 43, 63, whatever that may be. I don't look at that number. I look at my physical capabilities, my financial capabilities, my mental capacity, and what my desires and what's going to really make my choices easy to achieve, because that's something that gives me the I suppose the inspiration to go and achieve it.
Yeah.
Like if you had said to me, 3 years ago that I'd be swimming in the English Channel, I would have gone, no chance in hell, because I hated swimming. As a runner, why would you go up and down a bloody pool endlessly? Open bay. Okay, when I can run from point A to point B. And here I am now, last Sunday, I did 10K in the pool. I did 6.3 this morning. And then once this journey's over, I'll retire from that. I won't go back. I won't go back to swimming. I'll purely focus on other efforts. And for me, there's no numbers of age involved, and because you see people retire at 35 because they've got the financial capacity to do that. They could have won the lotto or sold a major business for a huge fortune. And if they want to go and play golf and sit around a pool all day, that's what inspires them.
Yeah. Interested to ask this question because I know that your life is pretty full, but I am aware of a little hobby that you have played around with, the piano. So are there any hobbies that you could see yourself doing down the track?
The piano was a regret because I had the chance way back on when I was first up 15 going 16, had a chance to spend the weekend with Stevie Wonder, and I met him in central Queensland. I came down, I won't go a long story, but I came down to Brisbane with him. We went to Boonville Entertainment Centre a couple of hours prior to the concert. He said, Gerrard, can you play that piano? I said, no, Stevie, look, I gave it away for sport. And he said, oh, damn it. He goes, I was going to get you to play in the concert. And so I thought, damn it. Anyway, so that was sort of put to bed. And then come 2009, I got a text message saying there were tickets at Boonville Entertainment Centre. I went there with Heather, my wife, saw Stevie Wonder, second right. And I told my wife about this story. And she's gone, yeah, sure. You hadn't met Stevie Wonder, even though I had the photos. Went backstage and his brother said, Gerrard, it's so good to see you. They approached me and then got me out in front of the people in this VIP area and said, okay, Ron, come up and get your photo with Stevie Wonder. Then we asked you to leave because he wants to spend some time with Gerrard. Sat with him at the piano for multiple hours. He asked me if we could catch up. Anyway, with Manhattan in mind, and I've always had this passion to pay that back to Stevie because of his generosity, was to learn the piano. So I thought, okay, well, I've got a piano. I've learnt so far. I've learnt ebony and ivory, and looking to obviously go on. And hey, look, one day at graceful moments, I might be out there playing the piano, just entertain people and taking on. So I wouldn't call it a hobby. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Because the challenge is to learn how to play, to learn the songs, and then to show Stevie that, that regret I had back then is now something played out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I've always had the view that as soon as somebody starts working, so they go through school and start working, from the moment they start working, they're on a retirement pathway. They're not aware of it. It's not something that they're necessarily conscious of. But at some point in time, it becomes something that they're aware of. And it might be in their early 30s or, who knows. But from the time that they start working, they're on that retirement pathway. So if you had someone that was starting that career, whatever it might be, what words of wisdom would you share with them about preparing for what might lie ahead?
I think more importantly is that the job they're doing today, I can perhaps almost sort of guarantee that it won't be the same when they retire, even if they're doing the same job, will be done in a very different way. So it's being open to change, open to growth, having that mindset of that opportunity to really explore other opportunities, and definitely don't say no to an opportunity, as in explore it first, seriously consider it before you actually sort of close the door on it, because you never know what can lead from that. As I saw, when I began the Paralympic committee, that was a big step. I resigned from my job, began it from the back bedroom with a laptop computer and a bubble jet printer, and it was about that opportunity. And I was sort of it was a struggle, but continued on and grew it to where it was. And the same with the cafe business. We had a small chocolate shop, and now we have a bustling cafe, 2 cafes, which turns over quite a good amount of money.
It's interesting that see, I wouldn't have thought, because honesty to the audience, you and I have been friends for a couple of years. We do struggle to remember exactly when that happened, but it was about 25 years ago, something like that, give or take. And so I was surprised just before when you mentioned that there was a regret that drove you, because I didn't think that you regretted anything.
Well, it's not regret. It was like a passion to really show Stevie that to pay him back.
Yeah.
Show him, hey, listen, mate, I gave it up for sport, and here's an opportunity. And look, it's something that I used to, when we used to have the corporate functions in the Sheraton or the Hilton Hotel, I used to walk in there and used to see a person playing the piano, and you go, God, that's good. That skill is to be able to sit down at a piano and just to punch it out. Or when I was going to QUT, there's a piano outside the swimming pool there, just for anybody to play. And there's even one at South Bank now. And, to see people play it, and it's just so good. And I thought, geez, that's a real skill. So,
yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And the information, I sent out and asked you to give me a response on a period of life that, if you had the chance to do that again, why? And your response was around the 2000 Olympics. And I do remember back then that it was very busy. There were functions left, right, and center, and there was a lot of stuff going on. So I can understand that you would have been completely shot by the time you got to Sydney.
I didn't realize how bad I was, because I was, and also I was biting off a lot, in the sense that I was sort of doing a Sebastian Coe where I was running the 5,000, the 10,000, and the marathon at Sydney 2000. So that was never been done before by by a Paralympic athlete. A, I was running the Paralympic committee. B, obviously competing as an athlete. So I was realistically living, in the office, getting there, before training, running at lunchtime, training after work. So there's, because with the 5,000, the 10,000, the marathon, you've got the ultra distance, and then you've also got the speed of the 5,000. And then I was, putting all the hours into the functions and other events, and the coordination of the athletes and the sports that we're managing. And I got to the athletes' village, and I was just gone. I didn't realize until the race went. If you go back to the old Maxwell Smart series, Get Smart in 1986 and 99, and there was a robot on there called Jaime. And there was one episode there where Jaime sort of ran out of batteries and went and sort of ran out. And I remember running the 5,000, and the gun went, and I sort of was fine for the first 100, and just the battery went. Yeah. Because emotionally, I didn't recognize how much emotional energy had been consumed by all that work I put into the preparation of the Sydney 2000 Games, not just in Queensland, but also on a national level as well.
Yeah. And so how do you think if you were back, if you had a chance to redo that, what would you have done differently, or how would
I,
you have been able to do it differently?
I know how I would have done it differently, but it would have really been hard for me. And it's the one word I hate when they talk about athletes, and a lot of athletes put in books where they talk about being selfish. And I hate that with a passion because I've never been a selfish athlete. I've always been an athlete that had to make choices and worked around my guides and what have you. But back then, it wouldn't be selfish. It would have been more the choices around my own recovery that I would have responded to in that preparation of Sydney 2000. I would have sort of gone maybe sort of 3 to 4 months out, sort of recognise, okay, it's really important to prioritise this part of my training and this part of my recovery and this part of work, rather than sort of, being. We had our kids' cots in the actual office, so the kids could come there and sleep there for most of the night because we were working there those hours, and we had it hidden behind, like, the dividers you have in staff rooms, so people actually couldn't see the kids' cots. That's how long we were working there. And my preparation and recovery would have been far different if I had made those choices back then.
Yeah.
And my results, most definitely.
Yeah. And do you reckon you would have done 3 events or maybe
Yeah.
2?
No, we've done 3. We've done 3. And I think that's where, any person sort of working now and into retirement it's about the emotional choices that can also consume the energy, where I think they think, oh, I'm getting old, but not necessarily. And maybe the emotional, what I call the emotional carbohydrates that are consuming in their body about their own thoughts about, okay, for example, subconsciously, they might be thinking that, oh, hey, listen, I'm 60 odd, I'm coming towards retirement, and those subconscious thoughts can consume their own emotional carbohydrates. We have our physical energy as the carbohydrates that we consume in our muscles, but we also have the emotional carbohydrates we have up in our brain.
Yeah. Great. Now, I posed another question, where I sort of shared the info out that, so when I sold my business, everyone assumed that because I have grey hair, you have to trust me on that, that I would retire. And I'd never used the word, and I was a bit miffed about that. But I decided that I would keep the radar open to opportunities. And I happened to be listening to a Colin Hay playlist, and on came the song "Waiting for My Real Life to Begin," and so I grabbed hold of that because that pretty much for me, it gave me a bit of a light to aim for, I suppose. So, is there any song that typifies you or in the future that you can think of?
I think for me, it's things like, for example, like when I do some of my presentations, I use Dare to Dream from Sydney 2000 Games.
Yeah.
There's a couple of songs that's, Unstoppable by Fearless. Look, there's A Million Dreams from The Greatest Showman. I think for me, there's, and I'll take on different songs for different pursuits or challenges that I take on, because they will have the words that reflect what that energy might be. And I don't look to an athlete, like another sports person, for that motivation. I think my motivation comes internally because I want to not show other people how it's done, but show myself. For example, I was never a great dancer. We told a great story. I'm not a great swimmer. I just have the passion and desire just to keep on swimming. I never rate myself as a swimmer or as a dancer. And it's purely because, hey, listen, it's there. Let's give the opportunity. Like the opportunity for Manhattan and the English Channel were provided. And I'm not going to say no, because I won't know how well I'll go until I've actually given it a go. Yeah. And sure, I'll fail in some respects. And so be it. I've run against many other able-bodied athletes, and I may have come, last or second, whatever. But yet I've come in able-bodied races, and I came second in the Melbourne 10K many years ago now. So it's, for me, I don't go, oh, gee, I came whatever position. for me, it's about really improving upon myself, not where I was in the race.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, look, thanks, mate. Thanks for participating today, allowing us to, for you to open the window a little bit for us to have a look inside and see what is happening for you. It's been great.
I think also too, just to finish up on, is that it's like, for example, and actually this is a good analogy in making chocolate, right? Is that being a chocolatier, I don't use one recipe in the sense that at the beginning of the season, I might use 200 grams worth of strawberries. Towards the end of the season, I might use 400 grams because the strawberries aren't as strong, aren't as heightened in the actual season. So there's no one recipe. They always change. And in our retirement and in our careers, there's no one recipe because things will always change, whether it be economically, it may be made redundant, the business might be sold, it might be merged, all those sort of things can happen. So there's no one recipe for how we take on retirement. There's no one recipe for our careers. It's about adjusting that recipe to make it desired and taste good.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Well, look, I've certainly enjoyed today, and I hope people listening or watching also will take something out of that. That's part of what the podcasts are all about. If you'd like to, if you are watching or listening and you'd like to find out a little bit more about what I'm doing, perhaps access the Arditi website, which is arditi.com.au, and have a look on that site. But Gerrard, thanks again, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Go to buy.
Thank you.